With the holiday season coming to an end, I hope you spent it doing your favorite things. Maybe you spent it drinking hot chocolate, Christmas caroling, or snuggled up watching your favorite holiday film. This holiday season, I decided to make a video about a genre of film that is perfect for this time of year, the murder mystery. These last few years, we've seen more murder mysteries pop up, which makes it the perfect time to talk about them. There's a lot of great murder mystery films to choose from, and I decided to focus on ones that take place on a tropical vacation. I like the vacation murder mystery because while it might be cold where I'm at, a tropical location can be an escape needed to get away with that treacherous act. With Glass Onion coming out on Netflix, I wanted this essay to center on talking about it, while also bringing in 2 films that inspire what we see. Now, the murder mystery can share similarities with detective films. For the purpose of this video, let's get a background on the detective film. In Detecting Men, Masculinity, and the Hollywood Detective by Philippa, it says, "The detective tale is composed of 2 stories. The story of the crime, which is composed of the cause of the crime, the commission of the crime, indicating the identity of the criminal, the concealment of the crime, and the discovery of the crime, and the story of the investigation, which is composed of the beginning of the investigation, the phases of the investigation, the elucidation of the crime, the identification of the criminal, and the consequences of the identification. In the detective genre, the telling of the story of the crime, followed by the story of the investigation in chronological order, would erase any sense of suspense and much of the mystery. It is the withholding of crucial events of the story by the Chazette, i.e. gaps, that promotes curiosity, suspense, and surprise in the detective film. Now, not every film has the typical detective. The practice of searching for clues is something the audience is invited, even encouraged to do. We want to solve it, maybe for bragging rights and to say, "I knew it." This is one way to keep the audience paying attention from the beginning, because by the 3rd act, the film might shock us with a big reveal. In addition, these films are more interesting on multiple watches, as each time you finish the film, the clues pop out, thinking, "How did I miss this?" There's a few things to look out for in these murder mysteries. One is the plot structure. In these films, the story might not be told chronologically. It can flash back to reveal details you missed and even exclude showing information till the very end. Next is the narrator. The films usually have a narrator, the person that is trying to solve the crime, and who we should pay attention to. Nowadays, the narrator might be unreliable, and that makes things more complicated. As we are trying to pay close attention, we might overthink it, which could lead us astray. We have to sort through what is true and what is false. A final thing to consider was that the detective genre wasn't established to call for change. Now, this isn't shocking, seeing as any genre dealing with the main character being a cop was going to be limited in the social change or issues it could possibly bring up or address, especially when the genre originated in a time where the majority had white men solving the mystery. Therefore, these films are not the call to action or debate on the essential cultural issues in our world. Like, wow, capitalism bad? Anyways, in order for the genre to have a chance of addressing anything rather radical, then it might have to be a completely different genre. More on this later. Before diving into Glass Onion, I want to talk about 2 of the film's influences. Now, Rian Johnson has talked about how the Knives Out films are influenced by Agatha Christie, so it's not a shocker that 1982's Evil Under the Sun is the one to talk about here. The other one is one that has been referenced a lot during the press tour for Glass Onion, 1973's The Last of Sheila. The first Knives Out made references to a lot of the most popular murder mystery films, like Clue, Sleuth, and Death Trap. However, I want to focus on how the exotic locations make for a perfect environment. To begin, let's talk about Evil Under the Sun. Evil Under the Sun is an adaptation of the popular book from 1941 by Agatha Christie. After the success of Murder on the Orient Express, 2 more Agatha Christie adaptations were announced, Death on the Nile and Evil Under the Sun. Neither film ended up being financially successful. Anthony Shaffer, writer of the previous 2 Agatha Christie films, wrote Evil Under the Sun. He stayed fairly close to the novel, with some small changes made like cutting out minor characters to removing scenes to keep the film within a specific runtime. Evil Under the Sun had an all-star cast, which is essential now in murder mystery films, with some notable British actors, such as Maggie Smith, Sylvia Miles, Jane Birkin, and Nicholas Clay. A brief synopsis, in 2 minutes or less. I don't know, I like a challenge. Basically, a body is found at the beginning of the film. Hercule Poirot, our detective, comes into the picture and finds out about a diamond. However, the diamond is a fake and he's tasked with finding the real one by the owner, a millionaire of course. The real one was given to his ex-mistress, Arlena, and the millionaire and Poirot make a plan to confront the mistress at the island hotel. But gasp! Arlena ends up dead, and Poirot is tasked to put it all together, trying to find the murder and the diamond. Our suspects are Hornsplatt, the millionaire, the Redferns, Christine, who cannot be outside in the sun for very long, and her husband, Patrick the flirt, Daphne Cass, the owner of the hotel, Rue Brewster, the writer, the Gardners, who are part of the theater industry, and the Marshalls, Kenneth, Arlena's husband, and Linda, his teenage daughter. The film sets up one character to be disliked, setting up their murder. Arlena just got remarried, and she treats her stepdaughter terribly. She's rumored to be having an affair with Patrick Redfern, which upsets her husband and Christine, Patrick's wife. Arlena's on the bad side of the Gardners because she cost them money after she walked out of a play. She treats Daphne poorly. She tells Rex to stop writing her biography even after he spent the royalties. No one is particularly fond of Arlena, so everyone has a motive. One thing about these murder mysteries was the clues you pick up along the way, which is a characteristic of Agatha Christie's novels. They want you to solve the mystery as the film goes along. The film begins with wanting to find out where the real diamond is, but it becomes more complicated than that. Even before Arlena's murdered, with the distraction of being on a nice island, there was a scene where Poirot finds out about the noonday gun to commemorate the war, which the hourly gong in Glass Onion is a nod to this. Poirot is observant, asking questions and noticing everything about his surroundings. I loved Arlena's costuming, especially the outfit with the dots. Before the murder happens, we see all the characters, placing where everyone is and to build suspense. Eventually, we find out Arlena died, and we're stuck trying to figure out who at the time was able to kill her. The guests are throwing one another under the bus, which just leads to a circle. Daphne even tries to get involved in the investigation, which sometimes those that do are guilty themselves. She also lies to Poirot in order to protect Kenneth. However, she is very interested in figuring out the killer and is suspicious of the Redfern, specifically Christine at one point. Poirot worked fast because he figured out the murder within 24 hours. He wakes up the next day and the big reveal is a spectacle as he takes his time, building anticipation, even wanting to have breakfast before he reveals the killer. The Redferns are revealed to have murdered Arlena, even though both tried to have an alibi. Christina changed the time on Linda's watch to make the time frame confusing. Patrick was the one that eventually strangled Arlena. The couple seemed relaxed when they were accused of murder, with Madame Redfern having so much confidence in the fact that there was no evidence. Nevertheless, evidence mounts on them, as they want the diamond that was important at the beginning. The woman that died at the beginning was married to Patrick Redfern under another name, Felix Gruber. And once he realized she didn't have the diamond, he went after Arlena. I liked the detail of Patrick Redfern having his second name, Felix Gruber, be a Latin translation of Redfern. They are captured, and the group heads back on a yacht to the mainland. 1973's The Last of Sheila is another whodunit mystery film written by Anthony Perkins and Stephen Sondheim, two names that might be familiar to you. The movie was inspired by real-life scavenger hunts the writers would have for their friends that took place in New York City.
It was to hopefully to let the audience have a lot of fun playing along with the actors, concentrating, trying to figure out things, make logical deductions, etc. And the one thing I feel about the script, and I think Tony does too, is that, granted, any murder mystery is a bizarre thing. It's like a farce. You have to accept a certain bizarre premise.
The film is held by its strong ensemble, with actors such as Richard Benjamin, Diane Cannon, and Raquel Welch. Filming occurred in the south of France and seemed to have been terrible, as they were filming on a yacht that at one point sunk. Plus, Raquel Welch has been rumored to have been very difficult to work with. The characters supposedly take inspiration from real-life figures. This includes Christine, based off talent agent Sue Mengers, the director Philip, inspired by Orson Welles, Tom for Anthony Perkins, and Raquel was based off herself, but she was told her character was inspired by Anne Margaret. A brief synopsis, the film begins with us witnessing a hit and run. The woman that dies is Sheila, Clinton, a movie producer's wife. The film takes place 1 year later, and Clinton invites his friends on a week-long cruise in the Mediterranean. The invites are sent to Alice, an actress, her husband Anthony, a talent manager, Christine, a secretary and talent agent, Tom Parkman, a screenwriter, Lee Parkman, his wife, and director Philip Dexter. Clinton arranges for a game to take place during the week, which would be the Sheila Green Memorial Gossip Game, as she was a gossip columnist. Each of the 6 guests get an index card with a secret, and each night has them stop in a different Mediterranean city and try to figure out whose secret is whose, while making sure no one figures out which one is yours. Therefore, each night a secret is revealed to everyone, and you're trying to figure out who the secret is about. The game ends for the night when the holder of the card discovers the proof. The group starts to suspect the secrets might be true after the first night with the card, "You are a shoplifter." Clinton ends up dead on the second night, and now the 6 guests are trying to figure out who killed him, as it isn't an accident. This film is fascinating to dive into, and no wonder Ryan took influence from it. First, we witness the characters get their invite at the beginning of the film, but also hints at the secrets that could possibly be theirs. One of the cards says, "You're the homosexual," and Tom is shown reminiscing on a photo with Clinton, who he had a fling with. Philip is shown with children sitting on his lap, referencing his card, "You are a little child molester." Christine is shown to be blabbing on the phone about a secret, which hints at her card being, "You are the informer," which had her tell on left-leaning actors during the second Red Scare to further her career. I would also say that the affair that's between Alice and Tom is hinted at throughout the film through their wardrobe, as they're matching on the boat. Couples would be matching at times throughout the film, like at the beginning with Alice and Anthony. Richard Benjamin, who plays Tom, mentions in an LA Times interview about how there's a difference in Sheila. There's no detective. You can figure this out if you played the game. The answer to all of it is in the title, like a crossword thing. All of the characters are connected to the film industry in some way. Tom is even excited to go on the yacht trip so he can pitch a script to Clinton, while being rather exclusive, has those looking to do what's best for their career. Similar to Evil Under the Sun, the power and influence that comes from accumulating more wealth drives their actions. After the first night, the ones that solved it are Lee, Philip, and Tom, with the game ending once Philip finds the clue. Philip seems to be the smartest of the bunch in terms of solving the mystery, with him being at the right location on the first night and Tom getting ahead because he figures it out quicker than Philip. Second night, Philip finds Clinton as he's hiding and disguised as Alice, the answer to last night's clue. After Clinton dies, they all reveal their cards, and one thing to point out is how Philip keeps asking what Tom's card was, and he takes a while before he reveals it, which is the "You are a hit-and-run killer." The card has Lee begin to drink, and she confesses to killing Sheila. Therefore, we find out an answer to one question: who killed Sheila? But that isn't necessarily the main mystery, as the murder of Clinton has replaced it. 6 guests appear to have some tension as Anthony picks up on Tom not liking him, probably because of the affair with his wife. Lee dies by apparent suicide while being assumed as the murderer for Clinton as well as Sheila. The affair is revealed to be with Alice and Tom, with Alice saying how she liked Tom when they were both married and breaks up with him, which we see Philip lurking when this information is revealed. At the end of the film, we find out that Tom, the one that had pieced together who apparently killed Clinton and Sheila, told the crew that Clinton made the game to figure out who killed Sheila, killed Clinton and Lee. If there was one character we were following around the whole story, our supposed narrator, it was Tom. We didn't have the typical detective here that we can trust off the bat, and Tom is seen as that. We learn he's an unreliable narrator, as not only was he lying to the guests, but also to us. Philip is the one that puts it together. The photo that Clinton took the first day had each character line up with the initial of the card that they had, which Lee's should have been A, as each card, while lined up together, would spell out Sheila. Therefore, Clinton's game wasn't meant to be vicious, just entertainment. Also, Tom crumpled up his card immediately when he received it, and the card shown wasn't crumpled. However, in this reveal, we also find out this other piece of information. We are brought back to a scene where the blunders are on in the water, which almost harms Christine. Philip is revealed to have done this as he doesn't want his secret of little child molester to be revealed, and thought Clinton was in the water. Therefore, Philip is no saint and will do anything to protect his career. Tom committed the murder to get access to Lee's fortune, and tries to kill Philip to shut him up. Before he can, Christine comes, and Philip blackmails Tom by covering up his secret, as he has to use the fortune to finance his next film, The Last of Sheila. Everyone seems to benefit. These films, having the cast be individuals popular in Hollywood, made it so, at the end of the day, these people are always looking to benefit their careers before anyone else. Instead of Phil being motivated by morals or justice, he's thinking about how he can get himself out of doing commercials and do the films he desires. To get where these characters were at, they had to do some terrible things, and they aren't people that have morals whatsoever. This message leads us to our recent vacation murder mystery, Glass Onion. Glass Onion is the sequel to 2019 Knives Out. After the massive success of its predecessor, the sequel was anticipated, wondering who would make up the all-star cast. The sequel lived up to the anticipation with actors such as Edward Norton, Janelle Monáe, Kate Hudson, and Leslie Odom Jr. The film follows Benoit Blanc as he heads to Greece on the invitation from Miles Braun, the billionaire. On this trip, there is Claire DeBella, who's running for governor, Lionel Toussaint, the scientist, Andy Brand, Miles' ex-business partner, Birdie J, a former supermodel, Duke Cody, a Twitch streamer, Whiskey, Duke's girlfriend, and Peg, Birdie's assistant. The film begins with the 5 people receiving stereograms. It is important to note how all 4 of them needed to work together to solve it, and even then they couldn't do it by themselves. Duke's mother and Peg helped, with Yo-Yo Ma giving the group the hint about Bach. Next, Helen comments on how the stereogram is basically childhood puzzles, which I find funny because the disruptors still couldn't solve it on their own. The disruptors are not as smart or innovative as they think they are. Andy, who ends up being Helen, breaks the stereogram once she receives it, which was the first clue to me that she might be different, but also, she wasn't going to conform to the rules. Christine from Last of Sheila and Birdie are the same character. Life of the party, kind of an airhead. Birdie had some evidence that she could be the killer, like her being jealous of Whiskey, envious of her youth, and even being the killer in the make-believe murder mystery game that they were going to play that weekend before Benoit Blanc solves it. However, she isn't just this entertaining life of the party character, as she's the first one to raise her hand saying she saw Miles burn the napkin, with Lionel and Claire raising their hand to finally sink Miles. It reminds me how in The Last of Sheila, Christine is the one that saves Philip from dying. When Birdie spins in her dress, it was a distraction not only for the characters but also the audience, because we miss what's happening right in front of our eyes. Therefore, Birdie was more than what meets the eye. Rich people being disruptors is just ironic, because to accumulate wealth you have to abide by society's standards. Very few people want to break the system itself, and the message is acting like they are. You need a system in order to flourish financially, socially, culturally, etc. This entire message was that the rich are going to help the rich. They're going to look out for their own interests. Helen calls them shitheads instead of disruptors, which is true because she sees them as a group of conceited people who don't care about the harm they've caused. This is on full display, as after Duke dies, the first thing Claire is thinking about is her reputation. Not the fact that a dear friend just died in front of her, but the headlines, making the death about herself. A criticism of Agatha Christie's books are how the characters can feel like archetypes, with them not being further developed if they aren't the killer. I think that's a criticism we can see in the Knives Out films. Some characters can feel rather two-dimensional, with them not feeling like more than a suspect in the murder case and forgotten when they're innocent. I think of the Gardeners in Evil Under the Sun just being a wealthy couple on vacation, fading into the background. Anthony in The Last of Sheila just being comedic relief, or someone like Peg. We never consider those characters as the murderers since we kind of forget about them sometimes. Peg is a non-factor in this film. I like to look at the introduction of her character with the rest of the group. Claire and Lionel do acknowledge her, and Lionel helps with the bags. When they get on the island, Miles completely ignores her, greeting the other guest. He doesn't know her name, and when he's handing out drinks for everyone later in the movie, he just hands her a red Solo cup. Peg, who has been with Birdie for 10 years, and has probably been on these trips before, isn't treated as an equal by Miles. She fades into the background and shows how he views people that have no use to him. Also the name Peg. I can't help but think of the saying, take someone down a peg. Peg is humiliated when talking to Miles because she doesn't want Birdie to make the Bangladesh statement. She tells Birdie about how the only thing on her resume is Birdie J, so if she goes down, she'll be affected as well. One detail I noticed was in the final hour of the movie, Helen changes for the evening festivities. She's dressed similarly to Benoit Blanc with her own version of a little necktie, almost like she might be fulfilling his role, which you find out she's doing with trying to figure out who killed her twin sister Andy and is impersonating Andy at this party. As in any murder mystery, we're made to pay attention, but a bit differently than in the other two. There were events that were happening off camera, of course, but there was also things that were happening in plain sight that we didn't notice. In the film, Duke's phone sticks out of Miles' pocket, and we see Miles grab Duke's gun. The movie is turned on its head when we discover we're trying to solve the murder of Cassandra Brandt. We think we're solving the murder of Duke. Whiskey is an interesting character, and I liked her talk with Helen. She wants to go into politics and is basically dating Duke to build a platform, so her name is already out there. She mentions how bad the disruptors are when they're together. In that convo, Helen's southern accent comes out, which makes me think about how both of them are imposters, not who they say they are. Whiskey, similar to Peg, have a transactional relationship with Duke and Birdie respectively. Whitney hangs up on Duke before he can say he loves her because their dynamic isn't really one of love. It's a terrible transactional relationship. But this dynamic goes beyond just them, but also the disruptors. Before Miles joined, it was a genuine friend group with Andy being the lead. But when he joined, he became the face of the group, and it became one that was transactional. Not only with him, but with one another. They became the people they probably didn't want to be. With Andy, I have to consider how she didn't really lead the disruptors. She stayed in a position of wealth and power until Miles kicked her out and her supposed friends betrayed her. Therefore, Andy isn't this heroic character that challenged the system either, because it wasn't until she was out she actually wanted to disrupt, which the only disrupting she was doing was proving she was behind Alpha. And it's debatable if the act is disrupting anything, because Miles could have potentially bounced back from being a fraud. What's a film that takes place in Greece without references to Greek mythology? I feel like this has been mentioned already, but to quickly wrap, Cassandra and Helen are both names from the Iliad. Cassandra has the ability to prophesize but wasn't believed, similar to how Cassandra in The Glass Onion saw Clear for being terrible and was cast out of the group for it. Helen is a possible reference to Helen of Troy causing the Trojan War, similar to how Helen here caused the group to turn on Miles. A war in itself. Helen could be a nod to Cassandra's twin, Helenus, with the same gift as her. I think about how Miles wanted to be talked about in the same breath as the Mona Lisa. The point was that he wanted immortality, but I think it's more than that. He wants to be seen as an innovator like Da Vinci, someone taught in schools, the history books. Miles being the killer is the best thing. When they were searching for Duke's phone, it makes a sound, and Peg tries to go towards the noise. You see Miles run out of the way, which on a rewatch, it's because he has the phone. At one point, when Helen suggests that Miles could be the killer, Blanc mentions how that couldn't possibly be the case, because he isn't an idiot. Throughout the film, Miles is mispronouncing / making up words, and it's even mentioned how he made the dock too low. Again, part of me is like the people around him are either so scared to tell him that he's wrong, or they're just dumb as well. On the yacht ride to the island, Lionel asks the captain where they're going, and the person says, "Piece of shit." And he thought it was just Greek, but it was literal. In addition, he got the ideas for shooting Helen from Benoit and burning the napkin from Lionel. Shocking. A billionaire lacks creativity. Which goes back to him taking credit for being Alpha's founder from Andy. With him being this successful individual, there is an assumption that he must be smart, when in reality, you can still be dumb. He was a copycat from his wardrobe to his talking points. He steals the entire Disruptor speech from Andy. He even got the idea from Clear from someone in Norway. Again, just dumb. No wonder Blanc was staring in disbelief. Near the end of the film, Helen begins breaking the glass fixtures. Miles does not care at first because breaking some of the art was disposable, not worth that much in his eyes. He even breaks his wine glass to join in on the fun. However, over time he begins to get annoyed, specifically when she breaks the Liberace, which is this expensive piano, and then the ever so priceless Mona Lisa. The cast appears in formations where you can see all of them, with blocking being crucial in this film. I find the one during the big reveal particularly interesting. It feels like a triangle in a way, with Miles being the furthest back but the top. There's also some space from him and the others. Like, yes, he's the leader of the group, but there's an obvious power dynamic and that he's not connected with them in the same way. In the same scene, when the camera would flip, the other side of the triangle would be with Benoit Blanc. Again, like they're trying to convince the others of a side they should be on or something. To close, the best quote in the film is this. Well, I keep returning in my mind to The Glass Onion, something that seems densely layered, mysterious, and inscrutable. But in fact, the center is in plain sight, and that is why this case has confounded me like no other. Why every complex layer peeled back has revealed another layer, and come to naught. And that was the problem right there. You see, I expected complexity, I expected intelligence, I expected a puzzle, a game, but that's not what any of this is. It hides not behind complexity, but behind mind-numbing, obvious clarity. Truth is, it doesn't hide at all. I was staring right at it. The killer almost struck Blanc's Achilles heel, which is maybe why I like this film so much. Blanc admits earlier in the film that he's bad at dumb things, like running around rooms and ticking boxes, also mentioning he's bad at Clue. The film had the clues in plain sight for the audience, but we're too busy focusing on everything else to pick up on it. The film is testing us on how we expect something that's complicated or even a killer that's smart. We want to understand the clever way the killer did it, but with this movie he was able to succeed because the people around him were too scared to stand up to him, not because he was smart or doing it in the best way. He knew the power and control he had, and that he was most likely not going to face repercussions for his actions. Anyways, this all goes back to how these films are not a call to action or anything more than just a fun murder mystery at the end of the day. The friend group was going to allow for Miles to continue on after murdering 2 of their friends until the Mona Lisa went down. The Mona Lisa was more priceless in a way than justice for their friend. Again, the system is still in place to allow them to just find another rich benefactor to fund their interest. So in the end, did they really learn their lesson? Anyways, I quickly wanted to say thank you so much for watching my videos and supporting me in 2022. 2022 was an entertaining year to say the least, and I hope to continue to challenge myself in making videos in 2023. I don't know how much I can say for what's to come, but I promise I have some exciting things cooking.